This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. All right. So we were discussing about the query operation to pull all the employee records from backend to the front end, and we successfully implemented this method employee set underscore get underscore entity set. Now to call this method from SAP UI file, so obviously we call through the OData service URL. So to trigger that method in the OData service URL, you need to keep the base OData service URL and followed by slash employee set. Okay, the corresponding entity set. Now this will go and call your method employee set underscore get underscore entity set, and it is giving all the data to you. But this data you are getting in the browser. But we need to get this data in our SAP UI5 application. So that means we need to call this URL from SAP UI5 application. Now this is our business application studio. To pull that backend data into the front end, there are three steps. Step number one is your business application studio. So it does not know where is your OData service. Correct? So it does not aware of your SAP gateway system. So we need to make our BTP, Business Technology Platform, to know about our SAP gateway server. And this is normally done by basis stream, and we have done this. So how to do this? Just a recap. So you need to log into the BTP cockpit and go to connectivity destinations. And here you need to maintain this SAP gateway system details. So once you maintain here, your BTP know about your SAP gateway system. Okay, step number one is over. Step number two, once the BTP know the SAP gateway system, once the BTP knows this SAP gateway system, now it can connect to this gateway system and pull the OData service details into the project. So add OData service URL or to the project, to the SAP UI5 project. That is the step number two. Now in order to do the step number two, I told you there are two ways. One is at the time of creation of the project, or if you have already created the project, right click on manifest.json, open service manager option. So yesterday's class I have already completed. And once you add the OData service, so those details will be updated in the ui5.aml file. And even it is updated in the ui5 local aml file as well. All right. Now we are going to see the climax of this query operation end to end, and that is we need to pull the records into the table using the OData model binding. Now let us understand this step number three in the entire class. So today's class completely is about the point number three. Okay. So now our SAP UI5 project, it knows your OData service. Okay, so this is updated. And let me go to the manifest.json file. So where is manifest.json file? So in the manifest.json file also, you can see there is a section that gets created that is called data sources section, under which your OData service name is mentioned, and the URL of your OData service is also mentioned. Okay, so is this the URL? Yes. See, this is anyway server. So we already connected to the server. So this is not required. Now inside the server, you need to go to this path /SAP/OPU/OData/ so that is what is mentioned here, and the OData service name. So this is the URI or URL, whatever. Okay, fine. So The project very well knows about your base OData service URL, which is this is called as base OData service URL. Okay, and just to remind that this changing part after the base OData service URL, this changing part is called as URI convention. So this URI convention will change basing on what exactly you are, which operation you are calling. Okay, right. Now let us discuss the third point. To handle the data in the front end, to handle the data in the front end, SAP has given two models for you. Okay, so one is OData model and second one is JSON model. And actually there are totally four models that are given in SAP UI5. Okay, four models in SAP UI5. The first one is OData model, second one is JSON model, and third one is XML model, and fourth one is resource model. So in interviews, if anybody asks you, so you need to tell all the four. One is OData model, JSON model, XML model, and resource model. However, XML model nobody use in the real time. Even that's just theoretically present, but the usage of XML model is it's not there at all. So you can ignore this model. But in interview, you just tell as a theory that is also one of the model, but it is not used in the real time. Now the left out models are OData model, JSON model, and resource model. This resource model is not used to handle the data. It is just for internationalization. That is I-18N purpose. So I-18N purpose means for your translations, for your to point to the multiple language files. So you will understand about the resource model in future coming classes. But the point that you need to understand is resource model is not used to handle the data. It is used for internationalization. So internationalization means to support for multiple languages, right? So when we log in English, the application should appear in English. If I log in Chinese, the application should look in Chinese language. So that is what is internationalization. In that process, this resource model is used. Okay, it is created automatically. You no need to create this resource model. Okay, we no need to create, it is already created. So where it is created, I will show you in today's class itself, but you no need to dig into this resource model now. Okay, it's very simple and very small topic actually. Okay, so I'm deleting this one as well. Now the left out models are OData model and JSON model. These are the primary building blocks, I can say, to handle the data in your SAP UI5 front-end application. Especially those who are from the front-end development. Uh, with that purpose, you join this training. You need to understand this OData model and JSON model perfectly, because in real time you will be playing with these two models only 99%. Okay. Right. Now in today's class we are not touching the JSON model. In tomorrow's class we will touch the JSON model. In today's class, let us understand this OData model and pull the data and show it in the SAP UI5 table. Now first, the definition of OData model. What is a OData model? OData model is a object. It's an object. And what this object will do, this object points to OData service and it helps to, to hit this service, to hit the service means to call this service, to hit the service and perform means it can hit the service and call your CRUD queue operation logic that you have written in the backend, that you write in the backend. Now, to understand this, let me give a small example here. This is the OData service URL followed by URI convention. Okay. Now, if I simply keep this URL, if I copy this URL, I open a new tab, I just paste it here. That's all. I just pasted. I'm not hitting enter. I'm not hitting enter. I just pasted. Am I getting this employee data? No, I'm not getting employee data. To get the employee data, tell me what I need to do. I need to hit the enter key, correct? So any URL, if you simply copy and paste the URL in a browser, will you get the data? No. After you paste the URL in the browser, you need to hit the enter key. Now I am hitting the enter key. Now you got the data. Now what do you mean by hitting the enter key? Hitting the enter key means you are hitting this URL to the backend. You are hitting this URL to the backend server. Correct? So when you are individually copying a URL and calling the backend, so what you are doing, you are manually hitting the enter key. So manually hitting the enter key is nothing but triggering the URL. Nothing but triggering the URL to the backend. Correct? Or hitting the URL to the backend, anything you can call it as. Similarly, in SAP UI5, URL is there. URL is there. But who will hit this URL to the backend? If you simply copy and paste the URL here, will it hit automatically? No. You are hitting this URL by clicking the enter key, correct? So similarly, we also have the URL. URL is very well there. Okay, but who will hit this URL to the backend to call your CRUD queue operation? And that is nothing but the OData model object. Did you understand what is OData model object? OData model is an object. And what this object will do, this object points to the OData service. This object points to the OData service. By pointing to the OData service, what it will do? It is having the capacity to hit this service to the backend. It hit the service to the backend and call the CRUD queue operation logic that we have written in the backend. Clear? So for the finally, I'm just repeating this one. OData model is an object. And what this object will do, this object points to the OData service. By pointing to the OData service, what it does, it hit the service to the backend. And it can call the CRUD queue operation logic that you have written in the backend. Clear? Okay, right. Now I said the OData service points to the OData service and it can hit the service to the backend, right? That means it is calling the OData service so that it hits the backend. Now, hitting the service to the backend can be done in two ways in the OData model. That is, first way is binding. That is what we are going to see in today's class. So through the binding also it can hit the service to the backend. And second one is called manual calling. Manual calling means through coding, through the convenient API of OData model. Also, we can hit the service to the backend. So first one we are going to see in today's class. Second one we are going to see in tomorrow's class. Okay, right. So let us see the first one, binding. Now, what is this binding and all? You will understand. Don't worry. Uh, the next one is when we say OData model is an object, where is this object created? I said OData model is an object. That's fine. But where is this object? Is this object exist? First of all, do we need to create it, or it is automatically created by your uh, business application studio? Okay, so once upon a time, if you go few years back, we need to create this OData model object. But somehow, after the introduction of Business Application Studio, SAP has automated this step also. When you do this step number 2 to add the OData service URL to the project, along with the step number 2, the Business Application Studio, what it is doing, it is also creating this OData model object by default. Okay, so as I told you once upon a time, when SAP Web ID is there, so we need to create this OData model object. But now that is not required. It is automatically creating this object also and pointing to the OData service also. Okay, right. Let me show you where this OData model object has been created. So this is created through the configuration in the manifest.json file. So if you go to the manifest.json file down, there is a section that gets created called models. Okay, so whatever the models that we discussed, like OData model or the resource model, JSON model, any model you can create under this models section. So you can clearly see there is already a resource model created. So with the name I18, I will explain the syntax of this configuration. Don't worry. Okay, I will explain the syntax. So this model is called the resource model. So the syntax is the name of the model first, name of the model. For resource model, the name of the model is given as I18N by default. You can see the type of the model is the resource model, and this is exactly the complete name. sap.ui.model.resource.resource model is the complete name of the resource model, and it is saying, it is pointing to the language translation file, that is this one, i18n.property file. So we will come back to this entire section later. So you no need to worry, even if you do not understand what I explain about this I18N, because we have a separate class on that. So totally forget about this line number 65 to line number 71. Okay. So what we need to worry about is this line number 72 to the line number 83, where the OData model object got created. See, so as I told you, the syntax of creating a model is through the configuration. So your model section started in the line number 65, and this is the resource model created, and this is OData model created. This is the OData model created. Now you can see there is a empty double quotation. So what is this empty double quotation? Why this empty double quotation is given? By default, when your business application studio creates this OData model object, it creates with no name. It creates with no name. See, no name is given for this OData model object. If you want, you can give it. Okay. So what I will do in this class, I will give some name to start with, and by the end of the class, I will remove that name as well. Then you will understand why to keep the name and what is the advantage if you don't keep the name. Why Business Application Studio has created this OData model object without any name. So these answers you will understand by the end of the class. Now let us start by giving some name. I'm calling this as O model. So this O model means the name for our OData model. This is the name for the OData model. Okay, right. Preload true. That means OData model loaded automatically. Next, data source means, so you are saying this is your OData model. Okay, if this is the OData model, then it should point to a OData service. It should point to the OData service. So where is your OData service? That is what it is saying. Data source means I need to point to this particular data source. And what is this data source? It will go up. It will go up and check the data source section. Now it will understand that, okay, this is the name that he has mentioned here. ZB70 EMP service. See here also ZB70 EMP service. So this is the data source name and under which the URL is mentioned. So like this, it will point to your OData service base URL. Okay. Always remember OData model points to the base service URL only. OData model points to base service URL. This is the base OData service URL, but not slash employee set. Okay, after that slash employee set is there, it will not point. Okay, right. And these are the default properties of the OData model, so you can just ignore them, no problem at all. Okay, so my OData model is successfully created automatically, but it is created without name. I just given some name. You can give any name, guys. Even you can give ABCD also here. Okay, but I want to give a suitable name. So I have given O model stands for O data model. Right. Now let us pull the data by using the binding concept of SAP UI file. So I'm opening the view. Now for the first time, we are creating a table UI element. So we are directly getting into the table UI elements, and so down the line we'll be having many UI elements like drop downs, radio buttons in drop downs, various flavors, okay, list UI element, all these things coming in the next week. Okay, so which are called as multi-value UI elements, right? So I'm going to create this table UI element, this table. Now, the table UI element has many subparts. So we already discussed that some UI elements will have subparts. Okay. So don't forget that a UI element can have properties, aggregations. Aggregations are nothing but the subparts of the UI element. And the third one is events or actions. Okay, right. Now this is the table. Inside the table, let me also open our already developed application. I just want to show you table so that you can see all the subparts. Yeah. Now this table, first subpart is this one. This is called the header toolbar. This is the subpart called header toolbar. So I need to write the subpart name first, header toolbar. Now inside this subpart, you need to create a UI element called toolbar. See, this is just a subpart name. For example, if I say kitchen, okay, kitchen is just a subpart name, but you need to keep the kitchen items. Are you getting my point? When you build a house, the builder will say this is kitchen, but the entire items are inside the kitchen. You need to keep. Right? So similarly, this is just a subpart. Header toolbar is just a subpart. It's an empty subpart. Now you need to create this toolbar. This is called toolbar. So we need to create it. So I'm going to create a toolbar here, And inside this toolbar, see, this is a toolbar. This, whatever this you can see, this is a toolbar. This toolbar is inside the subpart header toolbar. That's why header toolbar H starts with a small letter, but the toolbar T starts with a capital letter because it is just a subpart name, just like kitchen. That's all. When I say kitchen, automatically the entire kitchen item will not come and sit in my kitchen. You need to keep it. If I say hall, sofa, dining table, all those things automatically will not come and sit in the hall. You need to keep it. Correct? So similarly, when I say header toolbar, automatically the titles, buttons will not come. We need to keep it inside a toolbar. So this is a toolbar UI element, and here we need to create the title. So I'm going to create the title called employee list. Sorry, title text equal to employee list. So this is what even we have given here, employee list. This is the title. So we just create title. We don't create the buttons. So this is for the future. All right. So first subpart is over. Now the next subpart. The table also has the second subpart called columns. So this is the second subpart. Remember, the columns is again just a subpart. Inside that, we need to create the columns. So this is, sorry, we need to come outside of the header toolbar because it's a subpart. Now we can create new subpart. Now inside this columns subpart, okay, so column subpart means this area. This area is called columns subpart. So here I'm going to create my actual columns. So column, now inside the column, you can give your column name by using text UI element. Let us say employee ID. So let us create only two columns. First, you need to understand the concept, and then we can extend this with any number of columns. Employee name, that's all. So I created a table with a header toolbar section and columns section. So with only two columns, column 1 and column 2. So you can see the column C is capital letter. So that means it is not a subpart. Okay, and text is also a UI element, but not a subpart. All right. Now let us run this application. Preview application index.html. All right, so now you can see there is a nice table on the screen with the columns employee ID and the name. This table, what it does, it automatically equally distribute the size of the columns. So you can see the first column is here, and this is occupying till half of the table, and this is the second column. If you have three columns, automatically what it does, so it takes 33%, 33.3, 33.3, 33.3, total 100%. So basically, all the columns will be equally distributed, equal size basically. Okay, so if you take this table as 100%, the first column will occupy 50% and the second column will occupy 50%. If you have three columns, then 33.3%, 33.3%, and 33.3%. For example, you have four columns, then 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%, automatically equal distribution. So if you do not want equal distribution, so that also we can do. We will see it later. Okay, right. Now, the next part is about the data. Now, this data is present in another subpart. So, this particular subpart name is called as rows. Okay. So, totally how many subparts are there in the table? One is header toolbar. This is the first subpart. And this is the columns subpart, which is the second subpart. And rows. This is the third subpart. Okay. However, the third subpart, which is generally called as rows, but technically it is called as items. Technically, it is called as items. So I'm going to write the third subpart, which is items. So remember, items means the rows of the table are called as items. So let me write down. Maybe I will write here. The rows subpart of the table is called as items. Okay. So again, items is just a subpart. Okay, it is just a subpart. Inside this items, you need to create these rows with the data. You need to create the rows. Okay, items is means this area is called items. That's all. Always remember my house example. When I say hall, hall is just a name that is given to that particular place. If I say balcony, balcony is just a name that is given to that place. That's all. When I say balcony, automatically, one swing and some plants will not come and sit over there. Okay. So balcony is just a name that is given. So similarly, items means this area is called items. That's all. Okay. This area name is given as items, but you need to create the rows. Each row you need to create along with this data. So how to create each row along with the data? Let us understand. So rows subpart of the table is called items. Items is just a name given for that entire rows area. Now each row of the table is called as column list item. Now here is the actual concept starts. Now first I will code and then I will explain. Okay. So I'm going to do the items binding. So items equal to slash employee set. And then here I will write the column list item. And inside the column list item, there is cells subpart. And inside this subpart, I want to display the values in the table. So I will do the binding again to the employee ID. I will explain all that stuff. Don't worry. So line by line, we will explain. That is a speciality. Don't worry at all. Name, designation, skill, email, phone. Okay, so as of now, we have only two columns, right? So why I'm writing these many columns? Okay, so let me just beautify this. All right, so this has been beautified. Okay, so what I have done is I have added this items equal to slash, sorry, O model arrow mark slash employee set. So I added this one here, and I also need to add this one here. Okay. Now let us see what happens to the output window. Now you can see both the employees data has reached the front end. So which is the climax of this story. So you can see 100001 Rahul, 100002 Venki. So the data has traveled all the way from back end to the front end, and it has reached the SAP UI5 screen. Okay. Now keep 100% attention to understand the remaining extra code that I have written. Okay. So please pay 200% attention, guys. So here I have written something called items equal to arrow mark, curly braces open, then O model arrow mark slash employee set. So first of all, what is this? This is called binding. This is called binding. So here I have done the items binding. See, this particular items is a subpart. What is items? Items is a subpart. Items is a subpart of the table. So in general words, items is a subpart which is called as rows. Whatever the area in which your rows are appearing, that subpart is generally called as rows, technically called as items. Getting my point? This particular portion, otherwise I will just take a screenshot so that you will understand the concept. Okay, so if you take it here, so let me highlight each one with a different color. So this subpart name is called as, what is this subpart name called as? Header toolbar. So you need to be very clear with this, guys. Header toolbar. Okay, and in this header toolbar, what is the UI element that you create? Toolbar. So next. So what is this subpart is called as? Come on, answer. What
Columns.
is this subpart called as? Columns. This is too bad. Let me write it here. So this subpart is called as columns, COLUMNS. This is C small letter, and inside this subpart, what do you create? You create
Cell.
columns. Columns, C capital. Okay, getting my point. Whenever you get any doubt about subpart and what you are creating inside the subpart, remember this house example. It is kitchen, so what do you create? Kitchen items. If it is hall, what do you create? Your hall items, TV, sofa, dining table and all, right? So now the third part, which is this particular part, and this part is called as which subpart? What is the name of this subpart? Come on. What is the name of this subpart?
Row item.
Yeah, you can call
Row
it as rows or items, anything you can call it as, but technical name is row items. So let us call this as items. Okay. I think I can't write it here. Okay. So it is called as rows, or the technical name, exact technical name we'll use. So that is items. And inside this items is just a area. It is just a subpart name, right? So inside these items, what we create? We create the rows. Each row is called as column list item. So remember, one row of a table is called as column list item. Okay, one row of a table is called as column list item. This is very, very important, guys. So each row is called column list item. Okay, right. Now I said to this particular subpart items, which is this particular subpart, to this subpart I have done some binding. So since this binding, this is called binding expression. So this binding is done to this subpart. This is called aggregation binding. This binding is called as aggregation binding because you have done the binding to the subpart. You have done the binding to the subpart, so that is called aggregation binding. So uh, in binding, there are four types of bindings, so that we will see later. But first, understand this binding concept. Okay. Now, this items binding has a syntax. So let me give the syntax of this items binding. Items equals to double quotation, curly braces open, curly braces close, and then OData model name arrow mark slash entity set name from which you want to pull the data. So this is the syntax of the items binding. Syntax of the items binding. So items is nothing but subpart, correct? So subpart is actually called as aggregation. See, I'm calling subpart because you can understand. But subpart actual name is aggregation. Okay, so that is why this type of binding is called as aggregation binding. Aggregation is a subpart of a UI element and you are doing some binding to that. So this is called aggregation binding. Okay, all right. So now when you write this particular statement, what happens? So that is most important, guys. When you write this particular statement, what happens? According to the syntax of this items binding, you need to give the OData model name and then arrow mark slash entity set name. This is the syntax. Okay. And if you see this particular items binding that I have given, so this is exactly following the syntax. OData model name. So let us go to the manifest.json. What is our OData model name? O model. So that means we have given O model, which is the OData model name. And after that arrow mark slash entity set name. So what is the entity set from which I need to pull the data? Employee set. So that also we have given exactly entity set name, correct? So this items binding is exactly following the syntax. So this is fine. Now, when it executes, when this particular entire items binding executes, how it is going to convert, that also let us understand. When this items binding is executed, this particular open curly braces to the closing curly braces, this is called the binding expression. This is called a binding expression. Now this gets converted to items equals to O data model, O model. Okay, so O model means O data model. O data model points to which data source? This particular data source. And what is this data source? B70 EMP service. Data source B70 EMP service is pointing to this URL, which is slash SAP slash OPU slash OData slash this one. Okay, and actually this automatically appends the domain name. Okay, so if I combine the domain name, this is what it becomes. Okay, so this O model, this particular O model at the time of execution, when you run the application at the time of execution, this O model will be replaced by this entire URL, which is nothing but base OData service URL. So always remember OData model points to the base OData service. That is by default, you keep that in your mind. Okay. So from now onwards, whenever you see OData model, immediately what should come into your mind is OData model points to the base OData service URL. That's all. Okay. So OData model arrow mark will be replaced with this base OData service URL. And after that, there is a slash employee set. This will be automatically added. Okay. Getting my point? So OData model is replaced with base OData service URL. And this slash employee set already there, so slash employee set. Now this URL will hit to the backend automatically by the binding. That is what I said. To pull the data from backend to the front end, you need to hit the service. So to hit the service, your OData model object will help you. So to hit the service again, the first way is through binding. The second way is you can call the OData service URL manually by using this OData model object. That is for tomorrow's class. Okay, right. So whenever you do this particular binding, the binding itself got the power to hit the OData service URL. The binding itself got the power to hit the OData service URL. So when you write this particular statement, this is converted like this URL and it hit the URL to the backend. And when it hits the URL to the backend, it finds there are two records. So your items binding, this particular items binding is pointing to two records. It is pointing to two records, correct? So this is basically a URL which points to this result. Now it is pointing to this result. It is pointing to this result. So whenever the items binding is pointing to more than one record, it is pointing to more than one record. Now from line number 23, this line number 23 acts like a loop. It acts like a loop. So you know what is loop, right? So in the C program, Java program, we have written a loop. Okay. So loop means executing a set of statements multiple times is called loop. Executing a set of statements multiple times is called a loop. Now this items tag which is present at the line number 23, it starts behaving like a loop. Okay. So now let me open a new paint window. Okay. So we in our table we already have the header toolbar. So I'm just drawing out what happens at the runtime. So we already have this header toolbar, and then we already have the columns created. I already created the columns. Column number 1 is employee ID. Then column number 2 is name. Okay, so two columns. Sorry, name should be here. 50%. Yeah. Now, so whatever I am drawing, this is something that happens in your runtime. This happens when you execute your application. Okay, fine. So line number 23 acts like a loop and it enters the loop at line number 24. Now you can see inside the loop, there is something called column list item. Remember, column list item means, so what is column list item? One empty row. Okay, each row or one empty row is called a column list item. Okay, so now when it executes this tag column list item, when it executes the tag column list item, you can see the letter C is capital letter. It's a UI element. So column list item is a empty row of a table. So one empty row gets created. One empty row gets created. So this is the empty row, guys. This is having nothing. This empty row got created. Now inside this empty row, it said there is a subpart called cells. There is a subpart called cells. Cells, C small letter. Now this cells subpart, what it does, this is a area inside under each column. So this is the area under each column. Maybe I will keep it with a dotted shape. So do you have any shape with a dotted? I think I do not have any maybe extra shapes. Do we have? Maybe I will draw this with a different color. Okay. So this is called a cells subpart under each row. Okay. This is a subpart name. This is just a subpart name in the each row. See, first what we have done, column list item got executed. Column list item means empty row. Inside the empty row, there is always a subpart called cells. And what is this cell? Cells means the cells under each column. See, for each column, there will be a cells area. Employee ID, under the employee ID, there is a cells area. Name, under the name, there is a cells area. That is just an area. You can't see it with your eyes. Okay, right. Now what you are telling? So you have kept two UI elements here. One is text UI element, second one is also text UI element. Okay. So remember the number of columns that you have, obviously those many values only you will keep. Now these two are nothing but the values to be filled in these cells. Okay. So what you are saying, keep a text UI element here. So keep a text UI element here. So this is the text UI element. What text I need to keep? So it is this particular text is pointing to the OData field employee ID in the first iteration. Remember that items is a loop. You are inside the loop pointing to the first record. Okay. There are two records. There are two records, and now you are looping these two records. You are looping these two records. Obviously, in the first iteration, you will point to the first record. This is the first record. Now, in the first record, your OData model property employee ID is pointing to which value? 100001. So this 100001 will come and sit here because you have given this as a text. 100001. Getting my point? So let me put this again. I want the black color. 100001. Okay. So how did you get 100001? So this is what you need to understand, guys. So items act like a loop. When it acts like a loop, it enters the loop by pointing to the first record. Now it is pointing to the first record, not the second record, because it is in the first iteration. It is looping your result. See, this is the entire results. And when it is looping the result, this is the first record. So employee ID, it is pointing to 100001. So it places the 100001 here. Now next, so this is the text, second text. So this is the second value, basically in the same column. Okay. Now it is pointing to the name. So here, this particular name is pointing to Rahul. So the same thing you can find here. So this will be Rahul. Okay. Now, once this is over, the ending cells will encounter that. Then it understand that okay, the cells are over, no more cells. And again, the line number 29 get executed, which is slash column list item, means the row is over. Column list item means row, slash column list item means that row is over. Okay, so then your table understand that okay, this is what is this row. No more extra columns, no more extra cells. So row is over. And after that, the ending items tag encounter, when the ending items tag encounter, it again goes to this line number 23 to check are there any more records? Are there any more records? Yes, there is again one more record. So the loop again gets repeated. This is where the basics of the programming language is very important, guys. Okay, so now again the items tag get executed. It finds the second record. So again it enters the loop at line number 24. So in the line number 24, column list item is there. Column list item means one empty row of the table. So again one empty row gets created. Again in this empty row, again the cells will be placed. So I'm going to place the cells. So this is the cell 1 and cell 2. Cells automatically, created basing on as many columns as you have. So you have two columns, so two cells automatically gets created. Okay. Now inside we need to place the value. So again it is saying employee ID. So in the second record, employee ID is pointing to 100002. So this will be 100002, and the next one is name, and this name is pointing to Venki. So this Venki will be placed here. So this is how your table is exactly constructed, my dear friends. Understand? So your UI5 tags will act like loops also. This is not a JavaScript code, but still the these XML tags act like a loop also. Now tell me, is there any comparison with HTML and SAP UI5? No comparison at all. If you go to HTML, in your HTML, no tag will act like a loop, but here the tags are acting like loops also. Got my point? Right. So this is for today's class. We successfully pulled out the backend data into the front end in this table. If you have any doubt in this entire tags that I have written, you can ask me. So I hope you understand the concept clearly. So just to rewind, just to conclude. So for the table, to pull the backend data into the front end, so there are two ways. So first one is binding way. So in the binding way, so we have given these items, which is the aggregation subpart of the table, to a binding expression. So this binding expression converted like this URL, and this URL will hit. When it hits this URL, it finds two records. Now, whenever the items binding points to more than one record, then this items tag act like a loop. So this is the items tag. So this items tag act like a loop. It enters the loop with the first record pointing to the first record. Now in the first record, 100001 is there for employee ID and name is Rahul. So by the way, when it goes inside, first it creates column list item. Column list item means empty row of the table. And in this empty row, it created cells, and inside the cells, it places the values. Okay. And similarly, it creates the second, sorry, once this row is over, so when the items slash items tag get executed, it again jumps to the line number 23 to check, are there any more records? Yes, there is one more record pointing to this result. So again, it enters the loop column list item. So column list item means again one empty row. So empty row gets created, and inside cells get created, and values will be displayed. Okay. And again, the items tag, ending items tag get executed. Again, it jumps to the line number 23, my dear friends. But when it jumps to the line number 23, it checks, are there any more records? No, there are no records. So it stops the execution. Okay. All right. So did anybody drop, guys? No, right? So there is a small point I would like to mention. Now, this particular entire items binding we have done with this OData model name. Okay. But normally when SAP UI5 suggests, don't give any name for your OData model. So let's say I removed this name. Now empty is also a name. Remember, empty is also a name. Okay. So now what happens is you will get some reduced coding. You don't need to give this OData model arrow mark. Okay. Still it will work. There is no difference in your output. You will still get the data. Now let us see how this is working. So let me copy this items binding to compare with its syntax. Okay. Now when this expression get executed, first it compares with the syntax. Okay. So what is the OData model name? So do you have any name before this slash? No name. Now what happens is SAP UI5 checks, is there any model that is defined without any name? Yes, there is a model defined without any name, that is empty name. So this is also OData model only. So it understands that, okay, empty name is also a OData model. So it again replaces this empty space. This is actually, there is nothing here. So this is called empty OData model name. And again, it places the base OData service URL against it. Okay. So this empty is replaced with this base OData service URL, and then slash employee set is as it is. So since you have removed the model name here, you need to remove it in the further binding at the bottom. Okay. So this upper binding is called aggregation binding, because this binding has been given to these items, and items means subpart means aggregation. So this type of binding is called as aggregation binding. And at the bottom, this particular binding is called as a property binding, because this binding is done to the text property of the text UI element. Okay, my dear friends. So binding has, first one is aggregation binding. Aggregation binding means if the binding expression you have written against a subpart of a UI element, then it is called aggregation binding. And if the binding you have written is against a property, then that is called property binding. Okay. Any questions? Any questions?
No, sir,
Did
for
you
the
understand, first of all? Did you, all of you, did you understand this or not?
Yes, yes, everyone.
Yes or no? Okay. Yeah, somebody are trying to ask something.
it's clear for me, sir.
Okay,
One thing,
fine.
do I have a class tomorrow, or can we schedule it for 1 hour late? Because
Actually,
morning.
I about to tell you regarding that. So tomorrow is, we do not have class because even I go to flag hoisting, and even I recommend everyone to attend this flag hoisting. So don't think it is a holiday. Okay, August 15th or Republic Day, they are not holidays. It's your responsibility to attend nearby flag hoisting. Even you can go to school or even to your office. So please do that, and we'll meet on Saturday, 27th. Okay.
Sure, thanks, sir.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Ha- yeah. Happy Republic Day to all. Bye bye.